Good evening and thanks for joining us. The top stories today. The Senate digs deeper into the Russia investigation. They're trying to find out who to hold accountable for the false FBI applications used to spy on one of Trump's campaign associates. The White House bans Chinese airlines from landing in the United States. The move is a response to complaints from U.S. airlines that China has already barred them. Recordings reveal WHO officials complained internally about Beijing's lack of cooperation and virus data sharing. This is a sharp contrast to the public praise it gave the Chinese regime. And in China, another city wants to follow Wuhan's lead and test all of its residents for the virus. A retired police captain was shot and killed during a looting. The White House paid tribute to him today and other officers who have died over the past few days.
On Wednesday, the White House honored 77-year-old retired police captain David Dorn from St. Louis, Missouri.
And we must also remember the passing of police captain David Dorn yesterday, who was shot and killed by looters in St. Louis in an absolute tragedy. Dorn was a hero and an unfortunate casualty in the riots we have seen. Our hearts are with his family.
The retired captain could be seen dying in a disturbing video from Tuesday's riots in St. Louis. He was reportedly working security at a pawn shop when he was shot and killed. Local media says Dorn served 38 years in the St. Louis Police Department and his wife is currently a sergeant there. One of Dorn's sons spoke out on Wednesday saying his father was a forgiving man. In that interview with Fox 2 Now, he also sent a message to the shooter telling them to step back and do things in a positive way. The press secretary pointed to 3 more officers who died this year and left their children behind.
Thank you so much to our officers who are protecting our streets. Many have been shot, some have been killed. It's a travesty, and let us stand with law enforcement and recognize the huge contribution that they have made to our society and continue to do so each and every day.
4 officers were also shot in St. Louis, but the police chief said none of them had life-threatening injuries during the riots. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
As we approach the 2020 election, some senators are focusing on the 2016 Russian interference investigation. Today, the former acting director of the Department of Justice testified before the Senate.
There's zero evidence they were working with the Russians. Zero.
So why is the Senate still grappling with this Russia investigation? They don't know who to hold accountable.
Senators, whenever agents or prosecutors make serious mistakes or engage in misconduct, the Department of Justice needs to take remedial action.
Former Department of Justice official Rod Rosenstein on Wednesday testified before the Senate. He said he didn't know there were so many flaws in the FBI's applications to spy on Trump campaign associate Carter Page.
If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application?
No, I would not.
There were 17 mistakes found in the Steele dossier, a document used to launch the investigations into the Trump campaign. The dossier was funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee.
So let me just ask you, who should we hold responsible? What do you want this committee to do? The other side wants us to do nothing. They don't want to talk about it. They're happy for these abuses to go on, apparently.
But some Democrats say the Senate shouldn't spend more time digging into the matter.
I've made very clear that I think that it is absurd to be having this hearing.
But Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham says it's important, pointing out it's not about liking Trump or not. It's about restoring justice to the FBI and DOJ and protecting American democracy as we quickly approach the 2020 elections. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Peaceful protesters faced off with police last night in New York City. The two groups may be in talks to reach a deal. In the Bronx, looters reportedly ransacked businesses past curfew, yet Manhattan was mostly deserted except for police presence. Our reporter Kevin Hogan was on the scene.
An eerie silence fell over Manhattan Tuesday night. The city had 2 overlapping lockdowns, one from the virus and the other from a curfew to quell the protests and riots over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody. A group of protesters crossed the East River from Brooklyn into Manhattan. At the mouth of the bridge, the police intercepted them. A police officer at the scene said the protesters and police may be trying to come to a resolution to put an end to the protests.
Keep going.
Rioters and looters reportedly ransacked businesses primarily owned by minorities in the Bronx. The mayor said he spoke with the Bronx borough president a few nights ago. The Bronx president pointed to local kids who pitched in to clean up after the destruction.
Reaches out, he's got a couple of young people there. He says, "Hey, excuse me, which organization are you from?" And the kids say to him, "We're not from any organization, we live here."
Very few souls walked the streets in the heart of the metropolis after curfew. For the most part, the only people out were NYPD officers, riot police, and Homeland Security investigations agents. Over the last few nights, violent riots and looting ravaged Manhattan.
2 blocks down, can't see it.
But on Tuesday, lawbreakers were far and few between in the heart of the city. The police arrested some in pockets scattered here and there, most likely for looting, vandalism, and breaking curfew. Shops hired contractors to board up the windows that rioters shattered the nights prior. Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York.
And in other news, the White House is barring Chinese airline companies from flying to the United States. Beijing has already stopped U.S. carriers coming to China.
In another escalation of tensions between Washington and Beijing, the White House Wednesday placed a ban on Chinese passenger airlines from flying into the U.S. starting June 16th. The Department of Transportation said the ban will go into effect because China has failed to comply with an existing air travel agreement on flights between the world's two biggest economies. Up until this point, Chinese commercial and charter flights were still permitted to fly into the U.S. during the current health crisis, mainly to fly Chinese students back home. But China has yet to permit U.S. carriers such as Delta Airlines and United Airlines to resume any flights to China. The two companies complained to the White House about the double standard. Major U.S. airlines voluntarily stopped passenger flights between the two countries in February after President Trump banned entry of non-U.S. citizens from Chinese locations, but cargo flights kept flying. The DOT said in a formal notice that the Chinese are unable to say when they will once again let U.S. carriers reinstate flight schedules. The Chinese embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Internal recordings have emerged from the World Health Organization. They show WHO officials complaining about Beijing's unwillingness to share virus data, even though the head of the organization was publicly praising China.
New information has emerged about the World Health Organization's handling of the CCP virus. It comes after President Trump announced his decision to halt funding and decades-long U.S. ties with the WHO in recent months. The World Health Organization struggled to obtain critical information about the CCP virus from Beijing in the outbreak's early stages. That counters the WHO's public praise of the Chinese regime. Recordings of internal meetings show WHO officials complained that Beijing wasn't sharing data needed to assess the virus. The recordings show that by the second week of January, WHO officials were exasperated at the lack of information. But the WHO's Director General continued to praise the regime's response, as doctors in China were prevented from sharing information. Even after a state-affiliated lab documented the full virus genome in early January, the Chinese regime didn't share the sequence with the WHO until 10 days later, and only after the information had already made it online without Beijing's authorization. Chinese authorities even ordered researchers to hand over or destroy needed virus samples. Meanwhile, the WHO's Director General called the Chinese regime's sharing of the virus sequence impressive and beyond words. Between the beginning of January, when the full genome was first decoded, and the end of the month, when the WHO declared a global emergency, the virus spread increased 100 to 200-fold. The WHO's chief of emergencies said it's similar to what happened during the SARS crisis, when the WHO struggled to get the Chinese regime to reveal data. He said that it didn't happen in the Congo with the Ebola outbreak or elsewhere, and that this scale of cover-up only happens when dealing with the Chinese regime. Associate Health Professor Adam Comrade Scott from the University of Sydney says as the CCP's lack of transparency becomes more evident, it will become more and more problematic for the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, to continue defending China.
New York City is now providing virus testing to all of its residents free of charge. And if you test positive, you can expect a phone call from a contact tracer within 24 hours. It's part of the city's program to track the whereabouts of the CCP virus.
Testing for the virus is now free to all in New York City. City Mayor Bill de Blasio said Wednesday that until now, CCP virus testing was mostly reserved for those most at risk, including the elderly and frontline workers.
All those folks, it was crucial to focus on them first while we had a very limited supply of testing. Now we have a lot more. All New Yorkers are now welcome to come forward, get tested for free.
Those who test positive will also get a call from a contact tracer within 24 hours. Contact tracing identifies the people who might have been in contact with someone who tests positive. De Blasio urged anyone who gets a call from a contact tracer to answer it.
If you test positive, you're going to get that call, take that call, tell them about your close contacts. That's how we protect people. That's how we protect your family and every family.
The city is aiming to have 2,500 contact tracers on duty by the end of the week, with plans to build up to 5,000 or 10,000.
The venue for the Republican National Convention is up in the air. Republicans are now officially looking for a new state to host the event.
President Donald Trump says he's looking for a new state to host this summer's Republican National Convention. Host North Carolina is refusing to guarantee an unrestricted event because of the virus. The president announced the news on Twitter Tuesday night. He said the governor and state officials refused to guarantee that we can have use of the Spectrum Arena. He also wrote Governor Cooper is still in shelter-in-place mode and not allowing us to occupy the arena as originally anticipated and promised. President Trump told Governor Cooper on Friday that he wanted a traditional convention, a full arena with no face coverings or social distancing. Cooper sent a letter to the RNC Tuesday. He said a scaled-down convention with fewer people, social distancing, and face coverings is a necessity. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel issued a statement Tuesday saying Cooper is dragging his feet. She says they have an obligation to their delegates and nominee to find a new venue. The 4-day nominating convention is scheduled for August 24th. Republicans are expected to nominate President Trump for a second term. North Carolina's virus cases are on an upward trend. They've reported over 30,000 cumulative cases and 900 deaths. About 700 virus patients are currently hospitalized in the state. Republican governors of Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee say they are interested in hosting the convention.
Up next, a second Chinese city wants to test all of its residents for the CCP virus. This after Wuhan collected over 9 million samples from residents. That and more when we return.
Just how is China's Communist Party exploiting the political unrest in America that followed the killing of George Floyd? How is the Chinese regime seeking to emerge from the coronavirus pandemic as the dominant global power and becoming increasingly belligerent in Hong Kong and the South China Sea? And for former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor Katie McFarland, what was it like being thrust into the Russia collusion delusion, as she calls it, and watching Michael Flynn's now infamous call with the Russian ambassador become a centerpiece of the allegations against the Trump campaign? In this episode, we sit down with Katie McFarland, author of Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek.
Another city in China wants to follow Wuhan's mass testing initiative. The city of nearly 3 million has not officially reported many cases, making many wonder if the situation is worse than it seems. Tiffany Meyer reports.
Over 9 million citizens in Wuhan were tested for the CCP virus in May. Now, the northeastern Chinese city of Mudanjiang will follow suit. It has a population of 2.6 million people. Mudanjiang City only reported a handful of asymptomatic cases of the virus over the past few days. But the local situation may tell another story. Trains are suspended, bus terminals are closed, some schools are once again shuttered. Some neighborhoods are under lockdown. A video shows workers installing a gate to seal an entrance of a residential building. A police car is parked close by. One of whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang's colleagues has died from the virus. Dr. Hu Weifeng passed away on June 2nd. According to reports, Dr. Hu was diagnosed on January 18th. He made headlines back in March after becoming one of the doctors whose skin turned black due to liver dysfunction. An official cause of death has not been released. He was a colleague of whistleblower Dr. Li back when they worked at Wuhan Central Hospital. It's unclear if they knew each other personally, as they worked in different departments. His death triggered a wave of sorrow as well as backlash against authorities for their handling of the virus outbreak. Internal documents we obtained show that in several Chinese provinces, recovered CCP virus patients are getting reinfected. The documents show that in the Inner Mongolia region, over 1/3 of patients who were sickened by the virus had become infected a second time after recovering. In the city of Hulunbuir, the rate was even higher, at nearly 43%. Internal documents detailing the situation in other provinces also reveal a high number of reinfections. According to the Chongqing City document, out of 570 discharged patients, 174 patients tested positive again, indicating a similar reinfection rate of over 30%. The time frame for testing positive a second time ranges from 20 to 45 days after the patient was discharged. According to a document from Guangdong, as of April 6th, out of over 1,300 discharged patients, the rate of reinfection was nearly 17%. The documents also show the reinfection rate of 5 more Chinese provinces is over 10%.
And less than a week after a setback in a Canadian court, China's Huawei has taken another blow. 2 of Canada's largest telecom companies have made a decision that locks Huawei out of the country's 5G networks. NTD's Juliette Song has the details.
2 of Canada's largest telecom companies are bypassing China's Huawei, choosing other partners for their next generation 5G network. Canada's second largest cell phone provider, Bell, said it would partner with Sweden-based Ericsson for its core 5G network. Bell's competitor, TELUS, picked Ericsson and Nokia as its equipment suppliers. The decision will leave Huawei with no major carrier customers in Canada. A second blow to the company in less than a week. Just last week, a Canadian judge ruled the company's CFO meets the legal standard to be extradited to the United States. The Canadian government has been reviewing whether to ban Huawei from the country's 5G infrastructure, but hasn't made a decision so far. Huawei has drawn much controversy over its background. As the world's second largest smartphone maker, it has close ties with the Chinese Communist regime. Washington said Huawei is a Trojan horse for Chinese intelligence. The U.S. also has repeatedly accused the company of stealing trade secrets in North America and Europe. It warned allies of not using its 5G technology, citing national security risks. The U.S. has urged Canada to ban Huawei from its 5G wireless network while cracking down on the company hard. This May, the U.S. dealt Huawei a potentially fatal blow when they imposed a rule that prevents foreign microchip makers from supplying chips to Huawei. This left the telecom giant high and dry. Over 90% of Huawei's smart chips come from a certain Taiwanese manufacturer, TSMC. That company has reportedly halted new orders from Huawei after the U.S. ban. It would be near impossible for Huawei to find another supplier that provides high-end chips. Reporting by Juliette Song, NTD News, New York.
And coming up, The U.S. marine economy has the results of its first broad study on its contribution to the U.S. economy, and it's significant. More details after the break.
Hello there. Doesn't it feel like we're moving further away from the very values that our republic was built upon? And the media in our country have just been adding fuel to the flame, which is why you need to try The Epoch Times. It's pure, honest journalism that's restoring traditional values and reports the news with no spin, no hidden agendas, and no false narratives. So if you want to know the truth about the FISA abuse that took place during the 2016 election, or how socialist and communist ideologies have been infiltrating our society, or how the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to this global pandemic, and so much more, then you need to try The Epoch Times. And for a limited time, you can try the paper yourself for a full month for just $1, and we'll send you a very special gift. A 58-page magazine that investigates the truth behind the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the virus. So go to readepoch.com, try The Epoch Times, get your free gift, and stay truly informed.
A new report shows the marine economy is a top 20 contributor to U.S. GDP. It's even ahead of agriculture and entertainment.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration unveiled a report Tuesday that showed the marine economy's contribution to the U.S. economy. The industry grew faster than the U.S. economy overall between 2017 and 2018. Ocean industries contributed $373 billion to the nation's gross domestic product in 2018. That's more than even mining, agriculture, or arts and entertainment. It's the 16th largest industry in terms of employment, with wages and benefits around $160 billion across 2.3 million workers. The statistics are the first of its kind estimate of the U.S. marine economy. NOAA said the report shows just how dependent America is on its waters. Tourism and recreation, including recreational fishing, was the industry's main contributor, with $143 billion.
And Apple is going to court after investors lost tens of billions of dollars. The lawsuit claims Apple was dishonest about declining iPhone demand.
A judge has ruled that Apple must face a lawsuit claiming it fraudulently concealed falling demand for iPhones, especially in China. On November 1st, 2018, Apple CEO Tim Cook told stakeholders that demand for the iPhone was strong. But just days later, the company told its largest manufacturers to curb production. The judge assessing the case said Cook must have known that iPhone demand in China was falling before the call. On January 2, 2019, Apple unexpectedly reduced its quarterly revenue forecast by up to $9 billion. Apple stock fell 10% the next day, erasing $74 billion of market value. The plaintiffs are now suing Apple for the drop in shareholder value.
In our business news, the Dow rises 527 points off of positive data on the labor market and optimistic numbers from the service industry, shaking off protest worries.
There are signs that the economic slump could start its rebound soon, but private businesses laid off 2.76 million workers last month. That's small compared to the almost 20 million that were laid off in April. Even though the service industry is fighting off an 11-year low, businesses are not rushing to rehire workers as they reopen. The Institute of Supply Management reported that activity rose from its April low point but is still contracting. Walmart says it removed firearms and ammunition off of sales floors in some stores. It's a response to the riots and looting of recent days and done out of an abundance of caution. The company says the goods are still for sale while stored in a secure room. Walmart does not sell firearms in many of the major urban areas under siege from looters. The looters have latched on to the nationwide protests that emerged after the killing of a man in police custody. The Federal Reserve is allowing governors to designate transit agencies, airports, and other institutions to borrow under its municipal liquidity program. The central bank is trying to soothe the economic fallout from the CCP virus outbreak. The Fed also plans to expand its program that lets states directly issue notes to a municipal liquidity facility. Currently, only U.S. states and cities with a population of at least 250,000 residents or counties with a population of at least 500,000 have been able to make use of the program.
And coming up, a 3D company in Turkey releases a touchless door opener to help people stay safe from contaminated surfaces. Find out more about how it works when we return.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
As virus measures lift and people start venturing back into society, they're looking for ways to stay safe. One 3D printing company in Turkey is helping people adapt to life after lockdown.
Companies are innovating in the wake of virus restrictions. One 3D printing company in Turkey is working on ways to help people move on from the pandemic while staying safe.
With the normalization period, we have begun to focus on people and social life. Therefore, we have begun to develop products to resume our social life.
The company 3D printed a tool to help people open doors without making contact.
I do not want to touch the doors because many people touch them. I find these tools very useful.
It works by hooking the doorknob to pull the door open. The company's owner says they plan to give thousands of door openers away for free.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney.